Good morning, dear friends. Today is July 15, 2020, and we celebrate the memorial of Saint Bonaventure, one of the Franciscan saints, a doctor of the church and a bishop. He is one of the personages that we study in philosophy. And there's something interesting about this saint. His name is Saint Bonaventure, and it's the name also of our bishop here in San Pablo, in the Diocese of San Pablo, Laguna, Bonaventura Famadico. And what's the meaning of that name? A very beautiful name. It comes from part of his life. It's an anecdote. I'll relate to you this anecdote written by John Clark. And it says that the legend is told that in the early decades of the 13th century, a mother was grieving terribly that her young son John became increasingly sick and then looked as though he were going to die. Now, of course, she was desperate for a miracle, and so she turned to one of the holy men in her times, the famous Francis of Assisi. Of course, we know him as Saint Francis of Assisi. And while his mother arrived in the company of Francis, the saint raised John's little body to heaven, that little child. And then he asked God for a miracle. And after his prayer, Francis was assured that the young boy had been healed. But then something quite unexpected happened. As Francis handed John back to his mother, Francis received a flash of prophecy about the enormously holy and wonderful life that this child would have and would live. And so Francis stared into the eyes of little John, and then he exclaimed, "O Bonaventura, O good fortune." And the name stuck. From then on, the child was no longer named John, but Bonaventure. And today, the Roman Catholic Church celebrates Saint Bonaventure's feast day. So that's the meaning of the name of Bonaventure, or in Italian, Bonaventura, in Spanish, Buenaventura. And of course, there's a dispute whether this really happened historically. The historians doubt the validity of this story. But Bonaventure himself writes that he was deathly ill as a child. But through the intercession of Saint Francis, he was completely restored to health. So there's a grain of truth in that legend. And the saint, Bonaventure, goes so far as to write that he was snatched from the jaws of death through the intercession of Francis. Now, whether that happened the way we have read it a while ago or not, of course, we know that Saint Bonaventure is a holy man. He was a saint. And he was one of the greatest minds, together with Saint Thomas Aquinas, his companion of studies in Paris. And when one studies philosophy, he would always see these two together when medieval philosophy is studied. Saint Thomas Aquinas and Saint Bonaventure, one Dominican, the other one a Franciscan. And I'd like to quote these words from Saint Bonaventure. If we look at him as with a philosophical mind, he said, "Christ has something common with all creatures. With the stone he shares existence, with the plants he shares life, with the animals he shares sensation, and with the angels he shares intelligence. Thus all things are transformed in Christ, since in the fullness of his nature, he embraces some part of every creature." To explain this, in the vernacular, si Kristo, parang katulad siya ng mga nilalang. Tulad ng bato, siya'y naririyan. Okay? Tulad ng mga halaman, meron siyang buhay. Tulad ng mga hayop, meron siyang pandama. At tulad ng manghel, meron siyang talino. And it's said, no, with all of these, there's something common with all the creatures, no? Christ and the creatures. And we can say that also, lahat ng ito, meron tayo, no? Like Christ, we have existence. Like Christ, we have life. Like the animals, we share sensation, and Christ also sensed because he was a human being. And then he had intelligence also like the angels. So we are like Christ. May our life be geared towards that, na sana maging tulad tayo ni Jesus. And we also pray that we may be closer to the Lord as Saint Bonaventure was. Have a great day. God bless you all.